Shows fans, what is going on? It is another edition of One on One with Jon Alba here on adfreeshows.com, your exclusive long-form interview series where we speak to individuals from all around the pro wrestling spectrum. And this is a really cool one that I can't wait to dive into. Don't forget, you get One on One with Jon Alba every single Thursday, early access here on adfreeshows.com, and then every Saturday for free to the general public, AFS on YouTube.com. We've had a lot of fun talking to individuals from different companies, WWE, AEW, MLW, Ring of Honor, etc. This week, we're going back to the land of AEW, but in a very different outside the box kind of way. And I'm so excited to be joined now by Mikey Rukus, who you may or may not be familiar with the name off the bat, but you have certainly heard his work. He's the music production coordinator for AEW and is absolutely crushing it these days. Mikey, thank you so much for hopping on, man.
Jon, thank you for having me on. It's a pleasure.
I've been wanting to do this interview for so long, and the reason for me is because music is such a huge piece of my life. I grew up not just listening to so much different music, but playing music as well. I played all around the Jersey Shore music scene. I've toured up and down the East Coast into Canada playing music. So that element of professional wrestling is something I identify with. In your opinion, what role does music play in the presentation of wrestling?
Well, I think it's pretty universally understood that music is really the undergirding of our presentation all the way around. There are certain emotions that are connected with specific notes, specific instruments that tie into the characters that are being presented on the screen. So learning the differences between different athletes and talents and the stories that they're trying to tell and figuring out ways to help elevate that story is really what kind of brings it all together. So it's, from what I've learned over the last several years, it's the talent and then it's the music. It's the talent and the music. And they want to know who the producer is, like right off the top, the fans do, and everything like that. So yeah, for sure.
I'm really glad that you kind of explained it that way, because Mikey is the guy behind, I'd say probably 85% of AEW's themes, if not more than that at this point, outside of the ones that they're licensing from other people. So you just said that it boils down to getting to understand talent and then producing said music for them. Was that something that you anticipated to discover in this journey, or was there really any sense of understanding of what you were getting yourself into a few years ago when you started in this role?
Yeah, I had an idea of it. I grew up on WWE, WWF, and I understood the role that Jim Johnston played in his time there. And I was kind of, at the time, I started doing music in 2010 professionally, I can say, out of the need and necessity for supplemental income. And I was working as a retail manager at the time. And the only thing that I was really kind of good at, and I wasn't really good at it at all, was, fooling around making music. So I just kind of made the decision, and I started in the mixed martial arts industry. I just started working with fighters that are on the regional level, amateur level, independent scenes, and just said, I'm going to make a song for you, and just started that way. And I kind of understood the storytelling in that aspect. It's very linear in the mixed martial arts industry because it's all about fighting and winning, period. There's really not a whole lot of storylines. There's not a whole lot of
character isn't
venturing
really
into different. Exactly. So that market started to kind of dry up for me around 2015, 2016. And that's when I looked over to the independent wrestling scene. And I had stopped watching professional wrestling right around 2009. And I had gotten away from it completely because I was immersed in mixed martial arts. And I noticed that the independent scene, pro wrestling scene in 2016 was just exploding. Mm-hmm. And the workers were taking social media into their own hands and creating their own personas online and using that as a tool to go and tour in different places. And I thought it was fantastic. So I just basically started all over again. I built my name up in the MMA industry between 2010 and 2015 and just decided I was going to start over again in professional wrestling on the independent side. I knew personally that there weren't a lot of opportunities for full-time positions. So I just focused on telling the stories of the individuals that I was working with. And I knew at some point something was going to come along. I didn't know when, I didn't know how. I just knew it was going to happen. Same way professional wrestlers are called up and signed to contracts. I knew that there would be something out there. I had no idea AEW was going to be the one, but when I heard that it was announced, I felt it inside. Between 2016 and 2018, I had created 250 different entrance themes for independent wrestlers in the US and the UK. I saw a tweet from Dustin Rhodes talking about how proud he was of his brother. And then I kind of followed the breadcrumbs to see about AEW. And I was like, this gig is mine. It's mine. And I felt it. So here we are.
We talk a lot about the journey here on One, and your journey is something that I actually spoke about in my college commencement speech. The idea of not waiting for opportunity, but instead creating your own opportunity, more or less. And I think that's this big element in life that some of us maybe are a little afraid to take that risk on ourselves and dive in there, or we don't think we're worth it. And it seems like that's something that you really did. And there's a great irony because you just mentioned that pro wrestling boom on the independent scene in 2016. Well, that's because of guys like your current bosses, like the Young Bucks and Cody Rhodes and all those people diving in there. So did you feel some sort of authentic connection in that sense to them because of that?
Absolutely. And the funny thing is that my initial talks, I felt myself that I had something to prove. And in talking with Brandy, my initial conversations were with QT, Brandy, Chris Harrington, who is one of the VPs of the company. I kind of got the same feeling and the same vibe as we have something to prove. So I felt like that even though I came from outside of the business because I didn't really know anybody that was a part of this team. I felt like we kind of connected on that level. And for me, it was not about, oh, I made it, I'm here, this is my thing. It's about, I'm going to take this, I'm going to get to this level, and I'm going to work 50 times as hard to be better than what I was before you hired me. And it's just a constant evolution.
Did you understand immediately the grand scale of the project that you were getting involved with? Did you think it would maybe be like similar to like a Ring of Honor or MLW in size, or did you recognize that this was going to be a global phenomenon that was going to be on global television?
I can say yes and no. Originally, I had heard some things in the discussions that it was going to be a pretty big deal. And I had done some work in TV before, freelance and things like that throughout my time, but I was never in a situation where I was producing music for a live weekly episodic television show that's on national TV, prime time. And just in that aspect, the year of 2019 was just all of this anticipation. And then when October hit and we first debuted, it was lightning speed. And there were times where I had no idea, but you don't really think about like, I can't handle this. You just figure out how to get it done. So looking back at it now, I had no clue that it was going to be at this rate of speed. I guess that's the best way to put it.
And are you, no pun intended here, it's a terminology we use in television, but are you a one-man band for all intents and purposes?
Yes.
It's insanity. Yes. It's absolute insanity.
Yeah. And when I say one-man band, I don't mean just producing the music. I actually assist our legal team in the licensing of the outside music. I handle all the streaming analytics. I do all the digital uploading. I maintain and track all of these things. I do all the metadata, the cue sheet entry for every episode. So it's a constant thing. So yes, it's a one-man band. And I understood that going in. There was a lot of things that I wasn't asked to do, but when you're a part of a startup and you have an entrepreneurial spirit and you see others, you do what you have to do to build a foundation for something to sustain and remain long-term.
Well, and it makes that payoff, just like in wrestling, it makes that payoff that much more worth it, right? When you know that you're part of that journey, you're helping tell the stories of these individual performers, seeing it all come to life and your work being part of that effort, that has to be a very fulfilling feeling, I would imagine.
Yes, for sure. And it's the best thing is always getting the initial holy crap kind of response from the talent. in working with them or working with Tony. I work with Tony a lot, especially this year. Our communication is ramped up, and Tony and I work a lot very closely with our talent teams, and then I go and work with the talent themselves. And just knowing that they're happy first, and then having the fans receive it the way they do, it's pretty awesome, man. It makes you proud and makes you just it's very fulfilling, like you said, just to know that you're touching people's lives in that way.
So I need to know about your process. This is all I've been thinking about since I first was like, I need to interview Mikey here. And you document a little bit of your process on social media, which I think is really cool. And that's a really great way to give some insight. But for me, like if I'm songwriting, and I'm nowhere near at the level that you are, but it can take time for me to like flesh something out. Where does that process begin for you? Does someone come to you and say, hey, this person's coming in, this is what we have in mind? Or is it something that you have to enterprise from the start, more or less?
It's kind of a case by case basis. Sometimes there's time to plan, sometimes there isn't. You just have to have the flexibility. And the only way that I can explain it is that I've done this enough times to know how to turn the switch on. And that was one thing I focused on my time between 2016 and 2018. I had a very clear vision of what I wanted to become. And I knew, and I was a store manager for Dollar Tree at the time. And I had a store that I ran. I had 37 employees, and I ran that business. I was scoring independent films, and I was working freelance in pro wrestling. I just had to understand and figure out a way to just turn the switch on and just create. There's a lot of people that, I used to belong to composer groups on Facebook, and they would say, what do you do to get into the zone to create music? And some people will say, well, I get up and I meditate and I do some light reading. And the only thing that I was getting from that is, you're doing all that, you're not getting any work done. If somebody calls me and says, hey, I need this done, or I wake up and there's, $750 in my PayPal account and I have no idea who it came from, I need to track that. I need to track that person down or those people down and figure out what they want and get it done, because at one point everything was kind of stacking up. So it's just repetition over time, and there's a lot of times where there's just no time to plan. You get the call, and I'll give a prime example. So our Halloween episode, when we did the Ghostbusters Elite.
I can't wait to hear about this. I need to hear about this.
So originally we had planned out a Squid Game theme, and for whatever, all intents and purposes, it was canceled. I was actually at the mechanic picking my car. My brakes were getting done, and it was like 5:30 in the afternoon, and I got a text from Kenny and said, how fast can you work? And I was like, here we go. And I said, what do you need? He said, we can't do the Squid Game thing. He's like, I'm so depressed. Everybody's so depressed. He's like, I've never been this sad before. I'm like, tell me what you want. And he's like, I need a Ghostbusters type theme. And I was like, done. And at that point, like, I already knew it's 5:30 in the afternoon. The show starts at 8. The main event's probably going to hit around 9:40-ish. So I have a little bit of time to play with. I got stuck in traffic, and I got home probably right around 6:30-ish, somewhere around there. And as I'm driving, for me, it's almost like math. So I start thinking about all of these ways. Okay, I hear the Ghostbusters theme. I pull it up on my phone. I play it through Bluetooth, and I'm listening to it. And then I start breaking it down, changing the key, changing the tempo, rearranging the notes and the riffs to make it something that is ours, but at the same time, it still holds that same vibe. So
it's identifiable.
For sure. And some people kind of make the joke of, oh, it's like the Vanilla Ice thing, or it's like the Jimmy Hart thing. Sometimes that's okay. It's okay to do that, especially in these situations. So I had it, by the time I got home, I had it worked out in my head, and it's almost like math. And I got in, turned everything on, started to work. And I updated something on my DAW earlier in the day. I ran an update for whatever reason. I don't know why, but about an hour in, it was like maybe 7:20. I'm getting ready to mix this thing down, and my entire system freezes up. And I panic, and I did a cold reset list, and I lost maybe 30 minutes worth of progress. So I had to go back and do it again. So, and I got it done. I mixed it down. I sent it to Kenny at 8:03 when the show had started, and he sent back. He's like, "Dude, you're here," and I'm not gonna. It was a colorful text, and he was like, "You're the hero. You're a hero, dude." He's like, "You saved the show." So it was very cool, and I knew it was going to be a lot of fun when they came out and tying in the whole Budge thing from BTE and stuff like that. So it's lightning speed, and we're in there.
But I'm thinking about that segment, and like the payoff of that segment is Hangman Page being in the Marshmallow Man, and without your theme song being part of that moment and setting the stage for that, it's a dramatic. Like if they just come out to the Elite theme, sure, some people won't even bat an eye at it, but it plays into the underlying story that you're telling there as a company, and that is amazing. That is insane. I knew that it was a quick turnaround. I did not realize it was that quick. So I was going to ask you here. We're going to do for the first time ever on One-on-One with Jon Alba. We're going to do a little visual demonstration. So let me ask you this. So I was watching the Beatles Get Back documentary the other day, and I'm seeing Paul McCartney just like start blabbering around with his guitar, and then he just starts playing, and it turns into Get Back. And I'm like saying to myself, I'm like, wow, that's like one of the most famous songs of all time, just came together by him just noodling around. So like if you're laying down, I don't know, say John Moxley's original track or something like that, and are you just like throwing your guitar and drop D and just trying to figure it out as you're going along? Or is this something that like,
no,
John Moxley and you're like, no, it needs to sound like this?
Yeah. So typically what happens is the moment I get the call, I figure out the riff before I even turn anything on.
So you hear it in your head.
Yes. And I have ADHD. So I have a lot, and like you can see my guitar here, probably, I don't know. I just changed the strings on it the other day. There's a bunch of strings wobbling around. I don't play a lot. I get bored really fast. So I have to give myself projects. This is one of the self-coping mechanisms that I developed over the years. I give myself a starting point and an ending point. Like I have to have this done. So the moment I think about that, I just think about the riff in my head first. I have a 7-string guitar, so it's standard tuning, but it's got a low B string. So I don't have to worry a whole lot about drop tunings or alternative tunings or anything like that. I keep it that way, and whatever I hear is what I hear. Sometimes I'll change the key after I start playing around with it. But yeah, it's all up here. And another example, Nick Gage, when Nick Gage came in, we did that track in 45 minutes. And I say we because I got the same call this time from QT. He's like, "We have any music for Nick Gage?" No. Do you need music for Nick Gage? He was like, "That'd be great if you could." And I knew that he had used For Whom the Bell Tolls. So I went with it, and immediately as I'm walking up the stairs, it's playing in my head. I get in here, I start laying everything down. I lay down the drum tracks first, and I program everything. That's just kind of I have an electronic drum set right here I can play, but it's for my process. I love to be able to use the mouse, and I just click and program everything. I click and program the keyboards, my synthesizers. I click and program all of my drums. I live track my guitars, live track my bass. And it's just I don't know why it is. It's just my way. Some people find it super tedious. I get into this space where I lose myself and I'm in it. And that's it.
But as someone with ADHD, to be able to lose yourself in the moment and just do your thing and be productive, I have to imagine that's somewhat therapeutic for you in a way.
Yes, for sure. And I've explained this to people before. Like for me, a lot of times in my mind, I'll see and hear a million different things. And the moment I try to focus on one thing, I'm like reaching for another thing. When I have my grid up and I'm pointing and clicking, I'm literally just in the middle of a puzzle. So it allows me that opportunity to grab and pull and click and move and play things back sometimes. And I've learned to do it at such a rapid speed. It just becomes, I've become completely numb to it, and it's there. And the next thing you know, 4 hours have passed and I've got this giant orchestral arrangement going on and stuff like that. So I would not have it any other way. I used to think it was one of those things that I hated having it. There were days where I'd wake up and I couldn't even finish a sentence. But I've kind of learned to harness it, I guess you can say.
What would you say to people who find themselves in similar situations where they're dealing with something, whether it's ADHD or whatever they may have that hampers them a little bit? And what kind of advice can you offer on channeling that to focus on something?
I always try to think of ways that can bring somebody to a center. It wasn't always music for me. As a teenager, it was baseball for me. I played ball coming up.
Good man.
And my coach as a teenager, he was everything to me. And his voice for me, like, he was my hero. And his voice would move mountains. And there were times where if my mind was not where it was, I would just go to the batting cage and I'd take 300-400 swings. And every time I would swing, I would hear his voice. Turn your hip, fix your elbow, fix your shoulder, look at the ball, watch it coming in, adjust. So I would hear his adjustments and I would just do it and maybe 30 minutes, 40 minutes. And then it was almost like a reset. So some people find that type of centering in drawing. Some people find that in music. And for me, it's just, at that time, baseball was my big thing. It became music. And now it's almost like I can't shut it off. I was just telling my wife that last night. It's like now it's not even the level of riffs. Now it's all about frequencies. It's all about different notes hitting at a certain frequency to elicit an emotional response. And I was like, I never thought that I would get to that point, but it's, again, like, here we are, and it's my life now. So
Are you a storyteller?
Absolutely. But I focus on telling everyone else's stories. My story will be told one day. I'm not ready to tell it. So my biggest gift to the world for me is to tell everyone else's story.
How does music tell someone's story? Because we see movies and hear scores underneath a big action scene, Duel of the Fates with Star Wars. It's telling this elaborate story in and of itself. So how does your music help tell the story of the performers that you work with?
Well, for me, it's almost like music itself is raw energy and emotion. It's what it is. You create it out of thin air. It's not like taking pictures and assembling them to edit it as a video. It's something that has to come up. It has to come up out of you. So you take all of these experiences that you've had and that person's had, and all of the music that has influenced you or influenced them, and it's almost like alchemy. That's what tells their story. And it's almost like painting. So you think of notes being different colors, and minor chords can elicit sadness, and power chords can elicit energy and excitement and things like that. So for me, it's always about focusing on just telling the story and letting that story kind of set the pathway of the music that we're going to create.
I love that you use that term color, because that's exactly what I was going to say. You're coloring the moments. You're coloring these little individual elements that come together to create a pro wrestling match, to create a storyline, to create that in-ring story that these performers are trying to tell. And that's your role. You're painting it along the way and helping with those little things. And I think that's really cool. I guess then the question building off of that becomes, how do you keep your passion for doing that? Because telling a story is emotionally exhausting. Doing it in the form of music, where you're constantly having to rack your brain and come up with something new, I have to imagine that wears itself down on you.
Yeah, and I had made a tweet. I tweeted something out several months ago in regards to that, and I don't know if people really understand it. Even as performers, when you're performing, whether it's writing music or performing in the ring, there's an emotional toll that's taken. Like, there's an emotional toll that's taken on the person that's giving it, because you're giving a part of yourself. And there are times where you just feel empty. And and it's hard not to feel emotional just thinking about that, because there's been times where, and and I've never said this before, like I'll go downstairs, and it doesn't happen often, but there's times where I'll sit and I'll look at my wife, and I'll cry for a few minutes. You know what I mean? Because it's just there. It's all of this emotion is there, and it kind of, it pulls on you and it drains on you. But at the end of the day, if you have a calling, and it's just part of your makeup, it's like a never ending, it's a never ending flow of just creation. And I've never been in a place where I've experienced any sort of a writer's block. People talk about it. I've never had that issue. And I don't know why. I just do it. I just do.
You.
So yeah, there is an emotion. And I think what happens is, for me, I spend so much time focusing on other people. I can draw stories and ideas from them, as opposed to, what do I want to talk about? You know what I mean? And if all I did was try to talk about myself, there's really not much to talk about, like music wise. So you don't see a whole lot of my original stuff. I put an album out January of this past year. I'm probably going to start pushing that a little more into next year. I'm not really looking to create another Rukus album for a while. I don't really have anything personally to talk about. I've had some, I've had some experiences this past year, some great experiences and some not so great experiences. But for me, in terms of writing that, I'm pretty sure if that's all I did, I would have all kinds of issues, because I don't see myself as a very interesting person. I just kind of do my thing, but I can draw inspiration and musical ideas from everybody else. And I see people as stories, and I see their lives, and I see what you can convey to somebody else. It's like taking a part of them and handing it to another person.
So who are some of your favorite themes that you've had a chance to lay down in AW?
I always get this because I'll name somebody and then I'll get a text from somebody else. I thought I was your favorite.
So I'm getting you heat right now. Okay, yeah. I'm going to get you all some heat. Let's do it.
All y'all are my favorites. So I'm hands down, I would have to say Sting's theme. Mm-hmm. Yesterday was the 1-year anniversary of his debut. I remember seeing Sting in the Richmond Coliseum when I was, 10 years old, wrestling Ric Flair, and they wrestled for the title. It was a house show match that was the lead into the first Clash of Champions. So I saw that entire program worked out before it hit TV. And, it was something that was kind of like the white unicorn, the white whale, so to speak. And people would ask me in interviews all the time, who's the one that you would want to make music for? And I would always say Sting. And that was actually one that I had some time to think about. And Tony and I were texting back and forth, and we're just talking about some music. And he's like, I got a project I need you to work on. I was like, I'm all ears. He said Sting. And my heart sunk. Like it dropped. And I was like, oh my God. I said, okay, I immediately have to stop talking about Sting in interviews. I can't, because I don't want to give it away. Where I was one of maybe 4 people that knew at the very beginning. And I had found out just before Thanksgiving. So it gave me that Thanksgiving weekend to kind of panic about it. Because for me, with the fan base, I was it was 50-50 with the fans at the time. They didn't really know me. Even now, I'm still evolving in my production and things like that. So I knew that I had to nail this. But if I had focused on, oh my God, I just have to, if I don't make this right, I'm going to be a failure. I kind of threw all that out the window, and I went off of, let me just go back to basics and tell his story. And this is a new story, but at the same time, it's one that's continued because this is part of his journey. So this is like a new chapter in his journey, but it pays homage to his entire body of work as the Crow. And Tony wanted it that way as well. And I remember Tony saying, I want organs. I want organs. If you can get organs in there, great. So I put it together a few times, and I actually didn't have a chance to talk to Sting until it was done. And we get on the phone, and I'm kind of like, they were like, hey, this is Steve. And hey guys. And I'm like, hey, Mr. Sting. And Because I was that dude, man. Like I'm a fan at the end
You're a
of the
little
day,
stinger.
and yeah. So it was kind of I was starstruck on the phone. You know what I mean? And but that moment in itself was like this was a defining moment in my career, and it wasn't just the music that I created, it was the way the entire production set it up. So they made it all work. The way the camera was set, the video wall, the volume of the music and everything. It was a perfect moment, and I couldn't have asked for anything more. I will never forget it. I sat next to my wife, and we were just watching, and I knew. And as soon as those lights shut out, my heart was racing. And there's still times where we get a new theme that we're going to debut that I know is coming, and I'll get that same feeling. So I know it's not going away anytime soon, but that was the one. That was the one for me.
Well, our own Tony Schiavone, of course, from Ad Free Shows, huge part of that moment, just shouting "It's Sting" for the first time in 20 years, adding to the soundtrack of that moment. All those elements coming together, it's amazing. And you just said, like, there's other debuts and stuff coming. Like, I have to imagine All Out was probably one of the biggest days of your career, right? Like, you had a chance to work with the Lucha Bros for their live performance, which was awesome. I was there at that show, and I thought that was just a killer live entrance. And then you have these big debuts later in the show. Adam Cole's theme, you had to have known the moment that popped in your head that was just going to be a banger, and that people were going to be going nuts over that. And then we get the debut of Danielson after that. That night must have been so special for you.
Yeah, it was a good time. That whole entire weekend was an adventure, and I had actually I finished Adam Cole's song the week of, like, maybe the day before I flew out. And I remember he and I were exchanging a couple of text messages, and I was talking to Tony about it. I knew we had a tune. I had no idea it was going to take off the way it did. Like, I had no idea whatsoever. And all of a sudden it just became like this thing, and then the catchphrase, and then and then number one on iTunes. And I was like, what is happening here? And we encapsulated a vibe, and it worked. Everything kind of just rolled together. And that coming after the Lucha Brothers performance was something else as well. And we actually didn't get that whole thing down until the day of the show. So, Alex works for QVC. I don't know if you know that or not, but we were supposed to rehearse that Sunday, the day of the show. So he and I met up Saturday night to discuss a few things. He was like, I got to be with QVC until like 4:30 in the afternoon. You guys we're supposed to rehearse at 2. I'm not going to be there. I need you to talk to the Lucha Bros and tell them and run this whole thing about how it's going to go. I was like, gee, thanks, man. I haven't met them. I know they don't really speak a lot of English, so this is going to be interesting. We got it all worked out. Sonny was there. A lot of people don't know this, but I'll give him a shout out. Sonny and Ashley Demois were the two dancers with the masks on at the back with the white robes. They had choreographed it. So, and seeing the other guys do this, I remember seeing Sonny, like, you got to do it better. You got to do it better. I was like, get on him, Sonny. I'm not going to get in there. But yeah, it all came together that afternoon. And we went through the rehearsal. There was a couple other things going on, and I didn't know how people were going to receive it. I was like, you know what? There's nobody in the arena except some of the talent. So I'm just going to act like this place is full. So we ran through the rehearsal. And then as soon as we stopped, you just heard a bunch of, oh shit, oh my God. And then, and Tober was like, let's run it through one more time. I was like, all right, we're going to run through one more time. That's when Jericho came up and grabbed me and whispered in my ear. He's like, you're on effing fire, dude. Like, I was like, all right, we're going to be all right then. So,
it came off incredibly live. It came off awesome on TV as well. What a great live entrance. And when you can enhance the pro wrestling product by adding that extra secret sauce, right? That is the live performance or a great theme song. It really just makes the pro wrestling experience. So it takes it to another level is ultimately what it does. And it makes it feel big league. Do you struggle when you find out about creative plans ahead of time? Like, does that ruin it for you? Cause like You're one of the few people who knew Adam Cole was going to be coming in. You're one of the few people who knew Sting was going to come in. How hard is that for you to like maintain that inside, knowing that this stuff is going to happen?
I very beginning, it used to scare me. Like I would get really nervous. Like I would never give up any type of plans. For me, number one, I want to keep my job. So,
Sure.
you know, I'm not about spoilers or anything like that. But number two, I don't want to rob fans of those moments. So, you know, when somebody gets a scoop, and I understand with journalists, sometimes it's part of the business, you give the scoop. Somebody like me that works behind the scenes and we're putting on a show, our goal is to give the fans as much excitement as possible. So when something like that goes down, you know, I'll lay out, and, you know, I focus on the job that I have to get done. And that's that. I try not to think too much about the anticipation until the day of the show. And then I'm just like, man, I can't wait. And then I start thinking a million different ways, like, how is this going to be filmed? How's it going to be shot? Who's going to say this? What's going to happen here? When's it going to happen in the show? And then I wait for the formats, and then I look at the format and say, okay, this is going to happen here. So I keep my excitement in that and seeing the fans' reaction, and just I've learned to kind of keep it quiet and roll with it, because I know the payoff and the surprise is much more rewarding than anything else.
How amazing is that feeling when you see fans react positively to stuff like that?
Oh, it's awesome, man. You know, it's everybody likes validation. You know what I mean? And one of the things is that music is so subjective to everybody. Everybody's got different tastes, so not everybody's going to like everything that you do. You just have to focus on making sure that the talent is happy and the team is happy, and kind of let all those other things fall into place.
No doubt about that. We're talking to Mikey Rukus. He's the music production coordinator for AEW. We got a few more minutes here. And, you know, here on the adfreeshows.com platform, we are based all in nostalgia. So you mentioned Jim Johnston at the top of this conversation. When you hear that name, iconic name in the pro wrestling realm, and the man behind every incredible, memorable WWF theme song, WWE theme song over the course of 25, 30 years. What's your favorite retro wrestling theme song? And did he ever play any role in your development doing this specific job?
Of course, with him being the main guy to do this coming up, everybody wanted to kind of be like him. Everybody wanted to pattern what they were doing after him. My favorite track from him, I would have to say, for me, probably The Brood.
Thank you. Yes, I knew it. I knew it. I was like, there's one right answer, and it's The Brood. And Cody Rhodes told me the same thing too when I interviewed him one time. It is The Brood, hands down. Why is it The Brood? Yeah. Why is The Brood theme rule?
There's just a vibe. There's just a vibe. It's almost like a creeper vibe, and it's guttural. There's just something about it, that whole vibe. I love it. You know what I mean? So, and you know, I know that Jim isn't too happy with the way wrestling music is presented in 2021. But that's his thing. You know, he had his time, and things evolve and things change. You hear professional wrestlers from back in the day that don't look too highly on wrestling in 2021. And this is a cycle that happens in every industry,
sure,
with every generation. The old school rappers don't like the new school rappers. The old school rock artists don't like the new rock artists. TV, the way it's presented today, isn't like the sitcoms we had. We don't have TGIF anymore. You know, so it's an evolution, and some people accept it, some people don't. So, but yeah, there's no denying the contribution that he made and the inspiration that he put into the hearts of a lot of producers. My goal here in 30 years is to have topped that. And I want to make sure that I wrap the context around this, so it doesn't get, I know that sometimes websites will kind of grab things and kind of take things out of context. I am all for building a talent bench, and I'm all for reaching as many people as possible. So it's, for me, at the end of the day, my long-term vision is not just about creating great entrance themes. It's about teaching others that are on the way up to go out and not only create great entrance themes, but create awesome music for video games and television and film and things of that nature, and connecting the education piece into the middle schools and the high schools in the United States, and really kind of building that up to where when I leave and it's gone and my time is done, that there is a whole entire network and an army that's pushing forward.
And it becomes cyclical in a sense too, because as other people get better, that's pushing you to elevate your game to another level as well. So it feeds into itself. Is it difficult? Because I have to imagine you probably get comparisons to Jim Johnston all the time. I'd imagine anyone who does wrestling theme music, well, it's not Jim Johnston good, or wow, that is like up that level. Is that a difficult thing to balance?
In the very beginning, I felt like I was kind of in his shadow, and that's because being the guy that came from outside the business, I thought, okay, well, if people talk enough, I'm going to get a call one day and I'm not going to have a job anymore, And I walked away. I was in retail for 25 years. I was retail management leadership. I made decent money and everything like that. And I walked away from all of that to do this. And it's like, okay, am I going to wake up one day and my dream going to be gone because they're going to bring somebody else in because the fans don't like what I'm doing? In the very beginning, it was really rough on me, and it was hard. Like I would walk around, and working from home in my home studio, I don't see the team all the time. Sometimes I'll see them maybe once a month or once every couple of months. So I couldn't really gauge where everybody was, as opposed to if you go into a workplace and you've got coworkers and employees, you can kind of gauge what people are feeling. I didn't have that, and I wasn't one to speak up and ask. So I was kind of left to my own thoughts kind of festering. And then at some point, I had a piece about it. And I just said, you know what? Focus on you. Focus on what you do and how you can be better. And my wife would tell me the same thing. You don't need to worry about anybody. Don't worry about anybody. Don't worry. And I've had this conversation with Cody before. And Cody was like, look, you got the job. Don't worry about anybody else. You can't wish good talent away. But at the same time, you got the job. He's like, so don't ever wake up thinking you're not going to have your job. The job is yours, and just focus on doing it. And ever since then, there was just kind of like this piece came over me. And it's like, and it doesn't matter who's saying what or anything like that. I focus on just having fun and telling stories, and everything else just kind of falls into place after that.
I think that's a great piece of life advice too. We get so caught up in everything going around us, and we have to remind ourselves to just stay in that space and trudge through. And you're a great inspirational story, man. I knew that you had an interesting background, but hearing you go from someone who, if I'm not mistaken, you played in jazz band growing up, and then baseball,
marching band,
and then into retail, into MMA, into wrestling, now onto this huge stage. It's a huge inspiration story for people to look at and maybe try to follow in those footsteps. What would you like people to take away from your journey?
And it's easy to say, don't ever give up. I know that doesn't really resonate with everybody. It can resonate with some. You have to kind of take it day by day. I had an idea of where the end game was, but you can't get there unless you push. So what I would tell people is, if you're pushing for a dream, know where you have to go to get there, and try to take baby steps. Don't try to shoot for the stars right off the bat. You have to, not only do you have to create opportunity, you have to create your own experience. You have to create your own opportunities where you gain wisdom. And failures are never failures. Losses are lessons. That's the way I've always taken it. Like, you can take an L, that's great. And people say, oh, well, I took an L today. It's a good thing. Losses, L's, and failures are good because you learn more from those experiences than you do from winning. And I've made a lot of stupid decisions in my time. I've had a lot of bad things go really wrong, and a lot of it was self-inflicted. But, I learned to kind of pivot and not make the same mistake again, and figure out ways to advance, not ways to move backwards. And if that means if you're a musician and you want to be on a national stage and you want to produce music for a weekly television show, it's highly competitive. It's very dog eat dog, but you have to get to the point to where you can run at that speed. If that means you get up one day and all you have time to do is lay down a kick drum and a snare, you lay down your kick drum and snare. It's not a failure. You're still putting in that time. And then you go back and you build on it the next day, and you build on it the next day, and you build on it the next day. So, and just try to be as versed as possible. For me, different genres of music are like different languages. So you're having to learn all of these different languages. You have to learn the processing and the production and the mastering and the engineering that goes along with it. So you're learning all of these languages and course correcting in real time in front of the public. So it's not an easy feat, but if you take those steps to get to that point, it'll be a lot easier than trying to figure out your way. Like there's been times where I've had people lie on applications and I hire them and they completely just fall apart because they didn't take the steps necessary to get to where they wanted to be. They wanted to be that guy. And I hear that every day. I'm your guy. I'm your guy. I'm your guy. And I say, well, what have you done? Let me see your body of work. Well, I haven't really done anything. Well, show me some things that you've done and then let's talk. And I always want to give everybody an opportunity because for me, I feel like we all rise together.
You're an amazing success story, man. You really are. And I think it's just so cool to see you living out what has to be some sort of a made up dream job almost. It's just pretty insane to see something like that happen. I'd be remiss if I didn't ask you, who are some of your favorite bands that you grew up on and listened to today, or artists or anything like that?
So yeah, growing up, I'm an '80s kid. So I was always big on the hair metal stuff, and a lot of the stuff came from my sister. So we had old school hip hop, Run DMC, Beastie Boys, the hair metal, Cinderella. Like I had a cassette tape with Beastie Boys, License to Ill on one side and Cinderella Night Songs on the other side. So that was kind of my thing. In the '90s, I was really big on Metallica, and I started studying Megadeth. And that was really when I was big into playing guitar and learning the lead licks and things like that. And there was a point where I would brag to my friends, 17 years old, and I could brag. I could play every Metallica song ever made. And they're just like, wow. So everybody would come over and I would have my little Fender amp that's like this big and just play along and thought I was, the bee's knees, I guess you say. But, as my, I guess you can say musical palette kind of started to expand, I started paying attention. A lot of it came from jazz band in high school. So knowing what I learned there and being open to different types of music, I started delving into film scores. So Alan Silvestri is a big composer for me. John Powell's another one. Harry Gregson Williams is another one. So I really love to go in and listen and break apart their different components and how they construct scores. Right now, musically, my big band is Starset. Like I love listening to Starset, especially when I'm working out and I'm in the gym. There's just something about their vibe that I really dig it. I've always been a Seven Dust fan, a Korn fan, so I'm still there in terms of like the new metal and stuff like that, and then even a little bit more of the epic stuff. So.
And people don't even realize too, like you talked about Metallica and Megadeth, like there's so much classical inspiration in that music that it becomes cyclical in a way that you can feed off stuff like that. I think that's awesome, man. I just want to get a curious test of your palate there. I think that's great. You do awesome work, man. And when you're working out, you're listening to that. When I work out, the one time a month that I work out, I've got, it's all about the boom going. So I think it's pretty cool to have that come full circle. But I'm so appreciative of your time here, and thank you so much for coming on One-on-One with Jon Alba. You're doing awesome work, and we're really excited to see what you got up your sleeve next, man.
I appreciate it. And all I can tell you is hold on for 2022. We've got some pretty wild things, and I really want to push the envelope of wrestling music and just creating an experience for the fans that they've never experienced before, and really drive home that energetic aspect.
Well, when Christian Cage does his vampire gimmick in AEW, I look very much forward to your Brood ripoff because I'm going to be judging it head to head. So I'm counting on you to deliver there, Mikey. Okay, come through for me, my man. I really appreciate your time, though, and you do great work. And everyone can. Where can people find all your work? Not just in wrestling, but outside of wrestling as well.
Yeah, so I have a website, bringtheruckus.com. My album Bring the Ruckus was released on E1 January of this year. Matt Hardy uses Ghost Town as his entrance theme. That's off of my album. The song Rise, that is also on my album, is the theme for AEW Dark Elevation. So I'm there. My main goal is always to push AEW music, though. That's my heart and soul, to give to the fans and to tell the stories of the talent that we have. So we're everywhere. We're on Spotify. We're on Apple iTunes and everything like that. I mean, you can hit us up on YouTube, and I'm not going to go too far into it, but you may start seeing some live shows with some AEW music starting next year. So keep your eyes out for that, because it's been a while since I've been on stage to do some shows, and I've been chomping at the bit quite a bit. So I got some rage I need to let out.
Very nice. I love it. Well, we appreciate your time. Don't forget, guys, you check out One-on-One with Jon Alba every single Thursday on adfreeshows.com, and then for free at AFS on youtube.com every single Saturday. He's Mikey Rukus. He's killing it with AEW. I'm Jon Alba. We will see you next time here on Ad Free Shows.